Part 39. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 381. The outside of the school grounds was crowded with people, but at this time it was completely silent. Everyone stared at the huge school grounds with their mouths open. In the eyes of the world, the only one with an unbelievably beautiful face, the heir apparent of Prince Jing's palace, was weak. In less than a stick of incense, he shot down Situ Suanju, who was known as the #1 general in northern Xinjiang. Everyone was surprised and unanimously felt that this must be a mistake. Situ Suanju must have underestimated the enemy and was not prepared. Duan Muyu thought so, and Situ Suanju thought so too when he was angry and embarrassed. Including Dongling court officials all thought so. Because Situ Suanju, the first general in northern Xinjiang, was strong. He was sitting on horseback and wielding a spear to great effect. From that posture, he looked like a general who had practiced martial arts for many years. Prince Ji of Prince Jing's mansion is weak and delicate. Although his appearance is handsome and elegant, and his figure is slender, he looks like a gentle and elegant young master. He is clean, frail, and elegant, and does not look like he has practiced martial arts at all. So from the very beginning of this competition, the Dongling courtiers had the idea that Prince Ji would lose, but it didn't matter if he lost, because there was still Prince Huainan, right? The king of Huainan is stationed at the border all year round. Both father and son are military generals. If they practice martial arts at a young age, they will definitely be able to compete with this general from northern Xinjiang. Of course, it would not matter if the Prince of Huainan was also defeated by Situ Suanju. After all, he was the #1 general in northern Xinjiang. This name was very famous, and the person who dared to challenge the regent must have extraordinary abilities. If the Prince of Huainan is really defeated, it will not be too late for the regent to take action. The real king will only appear at the end. However, no one expected that Qi Shize would give Beijiang a severe blow in the first round. When everyone was dumbfounded, the northern Xinjiang Prince Duanwu looked at him in disbelief. The gentle and elegant Xie Xiaofu coughed slightly and calmed things down in a very cultivated manner. Martial arts practitioners focus on competition. It doesn't matter who wins or loses. General Situ's military should be regarded as a mistake, so he was accidentally defeated by Qi Shize. This is nothing. It was indeed a mistake. Situ Suanju stood up from the ground, dusted off his robes, and looked coldly at Xian Yuanqi, who was sitting elegantly on the horse. I underestimated the enemy, let's compete again. Xie Xiaofu was cut off before he finished speaking, and his expression suddenly became a little subtle. His original intention was clearly to find a way out for General Situ. After all, the first general in northern Xinjiang was defeated in less than a stick of incense, and he was defeated at the hands of the gentle Qi Shize. It was really embarrassing. It was a loss. As a guest from afar, Xie Xiaofu felt that he should take care of his face. I didn't expect that someone would just hit the snake and follow it with a stick. Do you really think you made a mistake? Xian Yuanqi raised the corners of his lips slightly and smiled casually. General Situ is willing to teach me, and I will accompany you. Situ Suanju said coldly, dismount. Xian Yuanqi raised his eyebrows, a martial arts competition. Situ Suanju's tone was indifferent. Prince Ji is not a military general. If I don't want to spar with you immediately, let's just have a martial arts contest. Being respectful is worse than obeying orders. Xian Yuanqi's voice was calm, and he raised his legs and jumped off the horse in a cool and calm manner. What weapon will General Situ choose? Swordsmanship competition. Xian Yuanqi raised the corners of his lips slightly. I'm very happy. Situ Suanju took out his long sword from his waist, while Xian Yuanqi turned his eyes casually. Red clothes. Chu Hong'ai, who was standing outside the school grounds, untied the long sword from her waist, raised her hand and threw it, and the long sword flew into the air. Xian Yuanqi raised his hand to catch the sword, holding the hilt in his hand, and gracefully made a gesture of humility towards Sidhu Suanju. Posture, please, General Sidhu. As soon as he finished speaking, Sidhu Suanju drew his sword and attacked with lightning speed. Bite! Xian Yuanqi raised his hand to block, and the two swords struck each other, making a crisp and sharp sound, and the two people soon fought together. The edge of Sidhu Suanju's sword is cold and sharp, and every move carries a thunderous momentum. It is as fierce as if it is about to kill Xian Yuanqi under the sword, which makes people tremble with fear. However, Xian Yuanqi's figure is elegant and pure, and his whole person is as if the phantom swam under Sidhu Suanju's attack with ease. Both swords flashed, as bright as light lightning. Both men's swordsmanship seemed to be extremely superb, and the speed of the exchange was dazzling. All he saw was a sapphire blue light robe fluttering and crisscrossing in the sword light, flowing with a flowing luster as his body moved. If Sidhu Suanju's moves are fierce and brutal, and all his moves are killing moves, then Xian Yuanqi's style is undoubtedly elegant and calm. Fast, but not messy at all. For the first time, it made people feel that even the competition was a pleasing thing. Sure enough, people should not be judged by their appearance. Chu Nanyi swung his folding fan and fanned himself gracefully. Prince Chi's martial arts is truly superb. Xian Yuanyao, I guess you are no match for him. Xian Yuanyao frowned and looked at him unhappily. My prince has never convinced others easily. Except for the regent who can convince me sincerely, no one else is qualified. Chu Nanyi clicked her tongue, not convinced. Why should you be convinced? Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows. I admit that Xian Yuanqi is very powerful in martial arts, but when it comes to military strategy, he may not be able to beat me. Wrong, you can crush him with all kinds of martial arts skills, even if he refuses to accept it. As for everyone else, just step aside. Chu Nanyi had to remind him, I heard that everything my sister learned was taught by Prince Chi. Xian Yuanyao was slightly stunned. Xian Yuanqi still knows the art of war. I don't know about that. Chu Nanyi shook his head. Anyway, Hong Ai's skills were taught by him. Xian Yuanyao was silent for a moment, and said lightly, so what? On the battlefield, Chu Hong Ai will not be my opponent. I think we should be united against the outside world now. Xiejin's voice came from the side slowly, with a bit of amusement. Does it matter which of you two is better? Could it be that Yao Yao is still planning to fight Chu Hong Ai on the battlefield? When Xian Yuanyao heard the name Yao Yao, goosebumps all over his body, and glared at Xiejin unhappily. In front of so many people, can you not call me that? He, a dignified general, lost all his momentum. Xiejin smiled amiably. What does Yao Yao want me to call you? Ah Yao. Yao baby. Or. You two should be quiet for a while. Chu Nanyi was annoyed and turned to leave here. I'm going to change the master's medicine and report the battle situation by the way. Do you want to go with me? Xiejin thought for a while. I think the master is not happy to see us now, and even hopes that everyone will disappear, as long as his majesty is by his side. You are right, but the medicine should be changed. Chu Nanyi nodded. You continue to stay here and watch, I'll be back soon. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 382. Xiejin turned his head and looked at the school field. Qi Shizi is very skilled, but his temperament is not comparable to that of ordinary people. Tolerance. Xian Yuanyao asked, what do you mean? Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hong Ai, a young couple, have always been perceived by outsiders as a strong woman and a weak man, but he has never tried to argue. He is willing to be a green leaf to set off his wife's heroic appearance. Xiejin, the corners of his lips curved. How many men in the world can do this? Xian Yuanyao stroked his chin, looked at the elegant figure thoughtfully, and hummed, "You are right. If General Chu had not been pregnant today, it would mean that the people who came to Dongling to fight would still be here. It must be Chu Hong'ai. Qi Shiza would probably just stand quietly aside, leaving all opportunities to win admiring glances to his wife, and then when Chu Hong'ai won applause and applause, he would smile dotingly and proudly. Completely he doesn't care about others saying that he is not as capable as his wife, and he still has to rely on his wife to protect him. Such men are indeed rare in the world. After all, the world is inherently unfair. Men are superior to women. Men are accustomed to being superior. Even if a girl's family has a chance to get ahead, most of them are suppressed. After getting married, being a virtuous wife to her husband seems to be the greatest expression of a woman's value. The world praises a woman's beauty. Morality is also usually described in terms such as gentle and intelligent, virtuous, and dignified and elegant. It seems that as long as she is virtuous, dignified, and generous, she is a qualified and praised woman. Not to mention men think so, even many women in the world think so. Therefore, a couple such as Qi Shizi and Chu Hong'ai are indeed extremely rare in the world. Maybe many people cannot understand them at all. Of course, there are also some people who can't help but slander them because of envy or jealousy. Xian Yuanqi is willing to bear the disapproving looks and words of the world, which is already difficult for ordinary men to do, not to mention what he has given to Chu Hong'ai is far more than that. My lord is injured. It is a great achievement that someone can block the challenge of the northern Xinjiang generals and give my lord some time to recuperate. Xiejin said indifferently, this couple will definitely become Her Majesty the Queen in the future. The most capable loyal minister and general in front of me. Xian Yuanyao raised his hand and hooked his neck, thank you, Master Zhu. Xiejin turned his head to look at him, with the corners of his lips raised slightly, why are you so unfamiliar all of a sudden? Didn't you just call me Ajin before? Do they still need such a serious title? In front of outsiders, you should be serious or serious, Xian Yuanyao said, turning to look at him with a somewhat inquiring expression. You just praised Xian Yuanqi so much, does it mean that you appreciate this type of man? Xiejin nodded casually, I really admire his broad-mindedness. Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows, I heard that Master Zhu is romantic by nature, likes beauties, and has countless concubines in the backyard. Xiejin was silent for a moment, then raised his eyebrows, what? Are you interested in my backyard? I'm not interested in your backyard, I just want to know when Ajin's good match will show up. Xian Yuanyao's expression was full of expectation. I think that when Ajin likes someone in the future, he should be able to. If Prince Ji and the Lord love each other wholeheartedly, they will be willing to sacrifice everything for her. It would be best if he could be a fierce tigress to control this monster into submission. Xiejin's eyes were playful, why do you think so? Because the return of a prodigal son is something worth celebrating. Xian Yuanyao patted him on the shoulder, although people are not romantic and spend their youth in vain, I still feel that it is not good to be too romantic. There are many women in the backyard, and it is scary to be jealous. What if a murder occurs one day? If Yao Yao is willing to obey me, I will send away the concubines in the backyard immediately. Xiejin said slowly, from now on, I will concentrate on being kind to Yao Yao and never look at other women again. Well, neither will men look, Yao Yao is willing to sacrifice everything for you. Xian Yuanyao's expression paused, and he looked at him with a look that was hard to explain, are you tired of Sleeping Beauty recently, and really want to change your taste and have a love affair? Xiejin smiled lightly, no. Of course. Xian Yuanyao sneered, didn't Her Majesty the Queen just give you a few beautiful boys? It should be enough for you to toss for a while. Xiejin clicked his tongue, Yao Yao is so heartless. Yesterday he was very close to me. Today he can't wait to draw a clear line and cruelly push me to others. Aren't you afraid of making me sad? Xian Yuanyao was about to say something, when suddenly a parabola passed through his sight, and then a loud noise penetrated his eardrums. After all, the general from northern Xinjiang could not resist for long, and was kicked by Prince Ji in the air, hitting his chest. Was kicked out. In the eyes of everyone, the kick was still elegant and calm, as if he was performing acrobatics, but in the end, Sidhu Suanju fell from mid-air to the ground with a bang, and could not get up for a long time. Naturally, everyone was stunned again. In fact, Sidhu Suanju's martial arts is not weak, at least it is much better than the Ziki general who was beaten to a pulp by Chu Hong'ai during the Great Zhou dynasty and called his ancestor. It is precisely because he has some ability that he dares to face it head-on. Challenge Rong Yu. But what no one expected was that the weak and gentle Qi Shiza turned out to be a hidden master. Not only did Sidhu Suanju miscalculate, but the Dongling court officials also did not expect it. General Sidhu, thanks for letting me. Xian Yuan Qi landed gracefully and stood in the middle of the training ground. His eyes fell on Sidhu Suanju, whose face was livid and he couldn't get up for a long time. He smiled nonchalantly. We had 2 competitions today. I won by luck. General, go back and have a rest. If you want to fight again tomorrow, I will continue to accompany you. After saying this, he turned and left, walking calmly in the direction of Chu Hong'ai. Everyone automatically made way for him. Chu Hong'ai was standing very close to Duan Muyu. Xian Yuan Qi saw Chu Hong'ai and naturally saw Duan Muyu. The other party had a very ugly expression and raised his hand to signal his men to help Sidhu Suanju up. Then he looked at Xian Yuan Qi and smiled faintly. Prince Ji looks weak, but I didn't expect him to be a hidden master. I admire him. I don't deserve it. Xian Yuan Qi smiled modestly, and he was unparalleled in his elegance. There are many hidden dragons and crouching tigers in Dongling. I'm afraid that my skills can't even make it into the top 5. It's really a fluke that I won today. I'm ashamed. Duan Muyu's expression froze. Prince Ji is really modest. Xian Yuan Qi held Chu Hong'ai's hand. I can't help it. My wife is much better than me. If I don't learn to be humble, she will make me unable to get up when I go back. Warm Ti. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 383. Chu Hong'ai glanced at him without any emotion and said calmly, you can go back. The competition is over, why are you still staying here? Xian Yuan Qi turned his head to look at her, his eyes were instantly gentle, and even his smile was more sincere. Okay. As he said that, he took her hand and turned to leave the training ground. He had no intention of staying to greet Duan Muyu any longer, the greetings were also false and meaningless. Even though he hated the other person in his heart, he still had to put on a hypocritical smile on his face, which was boring. There is nothing else to do today. Let's go visit the regent. Xian Yuan Qi tilted his head and looked at Chu Hong'ai. I don't know if Her Majesty will be bored. She hasn't shown up since the coronation ceremony yesterday. The palace banquet last night was also cancelled. It seems not good for us not to pay her respects. Paying respects is necessary, and we should also take a look at the regent's injury. Then we should be able to attend their wedding ceremony. Chu Hong'ai didn't say anything, which was a silent response. My wife. Chu Hong'ai turned her head and looked at him expressionlessly. Don't be so taciturn, you're almost as quiet as the regent. Xian Yuan Qi sighed, we're getting married soon, you have to show some happiness. Happy? Chu Hong'ai said calmly, I'm very happy. But you can't see it on your face at all. A truly powerful person should not show his emotions on his face. Xian Yuan Qi was speechless for a moment, because what she said seemed to make sense. Chu Hong'ai was silent for a moment. I was just thinking, is Sidu Suanju really the #1 general in the northern frontier? Xian Yuanqi's eyebrows moved slightly. What's wrong? Have you found anything unusual? His father Sidu Ying died at the hands of the regent, and Sidu Suanju must hate the regent. Chu Hongii said, he looks like he's in his 20s this year. He was an adult when his father died, and he knows his father's abilities. But since even his father was not the regent's opponent, the strength he showed today is even less likely to be the regent's opponent. Why does he dare to challenge the regent without knowing his own strength? Xian Yuanqi thought carefully after hearing this. There are two possibilities. First, he did not show his true strength today. Second, if the regent really agreed to compete with him, he may have already prepared some killer moves for revenge. Although the killer moves may not be able to deal with the regent, Sidu Suanju must be sure that he can. Chu Hongii said, but if the regent was really killed, he and Duan Muyu would not be able to leave Dongling safely. So he shouldn't be so stupid to come to Dongling to seek revenge, and bring a crown prince with him, which is obviously unrealistic. My wife is right. Xian Yuanqi nodded. So if he is smart, he shouldn't do anything stupid, but he definitely wouldn't challenge the regent just for a duel. Chu Hongii didn't say anything. Anyway, he can't run away for a while, so just observe slowly. The two of them soon arrived outside the Dajhan palace and found that Chu Nanyi was there too, waiting outside at this time, as if waiting for the palace people to report. Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hongii approached silently. Their eyes fell on the figure carrying the medicine box at the same time, and the atmosphere was weird for a while. Second master, are you going to study medicine? Xian Yuanqi approached him and glanced at the medicine box in his hand. Or, without this prince knowing, have you already entered the imperial hospital to work? Chu Nanyi turned around and saw the two people coming. She smiled gently. Prince Chi, little sister. Chu Hongii hummed, why is the second brother here? I'm here to change the medicine for the regent. Chu Nanyi did not hide it, and answered Xian Yuanqi's question. By the way, with my medical skills, I am not qualified to go to the imperial hospital. I am only good at treating external injuries. However, the focus at the moment is not on what injuries he is good at treating, but that Chu Nanyi, the bastard of the Chu family, is actually qualified to enter the emperor's bedroom directly and treat the regent's injuries. Xian Yuanqi thought of the unique husband selection banquet, and thought of Rong Yu's identity as the head of Juxiao Pavilion in addition to the identity of the regent of the Great Zhou, and then thought of Xiejin, Xian Yuanyao, and Chu Nanyi's unexpectedly friendly attitude in front of Her Majesty, and just wanted to sigh for a moment. For some people, conquering the world is a great cause that will be praised by future generations. They are busy, planning, recruiting soldiers, trying to conquer the world and become the world's leader, but they can't succeed in the end. For some people, the world is clearly within their reach, but they are obsessed with love and have wasted all their ambitions. Xian Yuanqi shook his head, asked the palace servant to report, and then stood outside with Chu Hongii waiting to be summoned. But they probably have to wait a little longer. Nan 11 slept late last night, and just got up to wash up, and then took care of Rong Yu to wash up. After both of them finished packing, Yin Yu brought in 2 glasses of water. Master Chu has instructed that we should drink more hot water and put on more clothes when it's cold. We should not catch a cold. We should eat light food these 2 days, reduce internal heat, rest more, and go out less. Yin Yunan 11 brought a glass of water. You are so nagging. Yin Yu smiled and said, I can't help it. I am also worried about the health of the 2 masters. We must listen to the doctor's words. Nan 11 said, what time is it now? It's almost noon. Yin Yu signaled the palace servant to open the curtains. The bright sunshine outside could already be seen. Master, you probably have to have breakfast and lunch together, but there's no difference. Anyway, it's porridge. Your Majesty can eat something else, but the prince can only eat porridge for the time being. Nan 11 said, I'll eat porridge with the prince. No need. Although Rong Yu was touched, he stopped him. 11 eat whatever you want, don't worry about me. Nan 11 glanced at him. Actually, I'm afraid you'll drool. Rong Yu was speechless. Yu Tong walked in with a tray, and there was only porridge on the plate. Nan 11 naturally took care of Rong Yu first, fed him a bowl of porridge, and asked him to continue lying down. 11 Rong Yu said in a low voice, his voice soft, if you lie down again, your bones will be stiff. Nan 11 was about to threaten him with her eyes, but thinking that he had just drunk water and ate porridge, he must be uncomfortable lying down, so she gave up for the time being. Chu Nanyi will come over to change your dressing later and report the situation outside. Nan 11 stood up and walked to the outer hall, so you can sit down for the time being to relieve your stiff limbs. You have to lie down again when he comes. As soon as the voice fell, Yin Yu reported in time, Mr. Chu is here and is waiting outside the hall. Nan 11 raised his eyebrows, when did he come? When your majesty just got up, he had been waiting for a cup of tea. Yin Yu said, Prince Ji and General Chu are here too. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 384. Is the contest between Prince Ji and Situ Suanju over? Yin Yu said, it should be. Let them all come in. Nan 11 said, turning around and walking to the bed, casually took Rong Yu's robe from the sandalwood hanger and put it on him. Can you walk? Rong Yu's tone was a little subtle. 11 my legs and feet are not disabled. Nan 11 glanced at him, do you think the injury is light? Rong Yu's expression was restrained, and he shook his head slowly. 11 calm down, my husband would never dare to have such an idea. Several female officials smiled secretly. Rong Yu glanced at them from a distance, and the expressions on their faces froze immediately. They lowered their eyebrows and eyes and stood up, not daring to be disrespectful. Rong Yu put on his robe, stood up and walked out with Nan 11. Chu Nanyi's brother and sister and Xian Yuan Chi walked in one after another, and respectfully paid homage. Nan 11 said, no need to be polite. Xian Yuan Chi stood up and looked at Rong Yu, who looked obviously not very well. It was rare to see him so pale and weak, so he couldn't help but ask with concern, how does the regent feel? No problem. Rong Yu sat down on the brocade couch with dragon patterns behind the long table, picked up the tea presented by the palace servant, and said indifferently, what was the result of the battle with Situ Suanju? A narrow victory, Xian Yuan Chi said in his usual leisurely tone, but I suspect Situ Suanju didn't use his full strength. Rong Yu took a sip of tea, his voice was light. Mo, the father and son of the Situ family are good at riding and shooting, and use long weapons. They have a longer lasting advantage in physical strength than ordinary generals, but they are somewhat lacking in close combat. Xian Yuan Chi knew that Rong Yu had fought with Situ Ying in the past, so he understood the styles of the father and son. He pondered for a moment, so he chose to compete in swordsmanship today, deliberately showing weakness to make me underestimate the enemy. Long weapons are mostly used on the battlefield. They can be used to fight alone, or they can be used to form a long spear formation to effectively disintegrate the opponent's combat effectiveness. If one side is better at using long weapons, it will indeed have a greater advantage. Short weapons such as swords are more suitable for close combat, easy to carry and easy to use, but if they encounter long spears on the battlefield, their combat effectiveness will be greatly reduced. Situ Suanju deliberately abandoned the long spear to create an illusion that he is just so-so. Whether he is showing weakness on purpose or not, there is no need to overestimate him. Rong Yu obviously did not take Situ Suanju seriously, and his tone was slightly arrogant. Since Duan Mu Yu is here, let him stay for a while longer. There is no need to let him go back before the new year or the beginning of spring. Xian Yuanqi nodded, I will convey this to the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister. As soon as the voice fell, a smell of medicine came to the nose. The three turned their heads and saw Qingling came in with the boiled medicine. She walked straight to Rongyu and bent down to put the medicine on the long table. Chu Nanyi smelled the smell and couldn't help frowning. Qingling. Qingling stood up and turned to look at him. Mr. Chu. Didn't I tell you to add less Coptis chinensis and replace it with bamboo leaves? Bamboo leaves are not as effective as Coptis chinensis in clearing the heart fire, but it is still okay to replace it with 3 times the amount. Pay more attention to your daily diet and drink more tea for clearing the heart fire, which can also achieve the effect of removing internal heat. The main reason is that Coptis chinensis is too bitter, so bitter that it is difficult to swallow. Rongyu is a regent of noble status, so Chu Nanyi naturally wants to find a way to reduce the bitterness of his medicine. Qingling looked embarrassed. This. Don't blame her, Nan 11 said in a light tone, and no emotional fluctuations could be heard. It's my request. As soon as this was said, Chu Nanyi and Xian Yuanqi turned to look at her, with some surprise on their faces. Your Majesty, Chu Nanyi felt that he should remind her, the bitterness of Coptis chinensis is difficult to swallow. He could smell how much Coptis chinensis was added to the medicine from such a long distance. He directly removed the bamboo leaves he had requested before and added at least 8 cents of Coptis chinensis. However, the amount was well controlled, and the effect was better than the original. Apart from the bitterness, there was no other effect. Nan 11 frowned. Good medicine tastes bitter and is good for the disease. Chu Nanyi was speechless in an instant. Looking at Rongyu again, he seemed to be unaffected by the bitter medicine. It was not good to let Nan 11 feed him in front of so many people, so he had to pick up the bowl and take a sip. The strong bitter taste instantly spread throughout the mouth, and the smell went straight from the throat to the stomach. Rongyu frowned slightly, and soon returned to his usual coldness and indifference. He said nothing and drank the medicine silently with his eyes closed. Because the medicine was just out of the oven and was still a little hot, he drank slowly, but the slower he drank, the more he could taste the bitter taste that made his heart, liver, spleen, and lungs astringent. It really was like a torture. He put down the bowl of medicine until the bottom was gone, endured the bitter taste in his stomach, took the snow-white handkerchief handed over by Nan 11 and wiped the corners of his mouth, always with an expressionless look. Even the action of wiping the corners of his mouth seemed elegant and noble because of his slowness. The air in the hall became a little weird for no reason. Chu Nanyi quietly watched Nan 11 take the water from Yin Yu and personally bring it to Rongyu's lips to let him drink the water to remove the bitter taste in his mouth. She looked extremely gentle. Whether it was the care on her face or the meticulousness of her actions, she was showing her meticulous care for the regent at this time. But Chu Nanyi always felt it was strange. As for what was strange, it might be the extra 8 gn of Coptis chinensis in the bowl of medicine. Okay, Nan 11 said, go change the medicine. Rongyu didn't say anything, and got up and walked towards the inner hall without saying a word. Chu Nanyi followed in with the medicine box. Nan 11 sat down on the couch and looked up at Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hong'ai. When do you two plan to get married? Xian Yuanqi's eyes fell on Rongyu's back, and he retracted his gaze after hearing the words, lowering his eyebrows and said, today I just came to see how the regent is injured. If there is no problem, I will get married before the new year. Nan 11 was puzzled. How is Rongyu's injury? What does it have to do with your marriage? I plan to invite your majesty and the regent to be the master of ceremonies for me. I don't want to go, Nan 11 refused. I am pregnant. According to folk customs, I can't attend the wedding ceremony of the newlyweds. It's unlucky. Besides, your father and mother are still alive. Why do you need us to be the master of ceremonies? Aren't you afraid that your father and mother will be sad? Xianyu and Qi actually wanted to say that if Nan 11 and the regent really became the master of ceremonies, his father and mother would definitely be happy. Besides, the king of a country being the master of ceremonies does not mean that the parents and elders have no status. That is the honor of the entire palace. But what Nan 11 said made sense. She was pregnant now, so it was not suitable for her to attend the wedding ceremony. In addition to the customs, the noisy scene was not good for her health. If something unpleasant happened, no one could take the responsibility. Xianyu and Qi hummed, "I was negligent, but I still want to ask for an order." The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 385. What's the purpose? I have been in love with Hong Ai for many years, and I don't want anyone else to ruin it. Xianyuan prayed. Although we both have the ability to deal with troubles, life is only a few decades, and if someone comes to make trouble every now and then, it will always make people feel unhappy. So enjoyable. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows slightly, but she understood what he meant, and turned to look at Yunyu, bring over the wedding gift that the regent prepared to give them. Yunyu said yes, turned around and fetched a long brocade box. Nan 11 motioned her to give the brocade box to Chu Hongii. Chu Hongii took the brocade box, opened it and took a look. Quietly curled up in the box was a dark long whip that was of good quality and looked tough and powerful. Rong Yu said this whip is good and is best used for self-defense. Nan 11 smiled faintly. Since ancient times, there has been a saying of Shang Fang's treasured sword. Today I will reward General Chu with a Shang Fang's treasured whip that represents his identity. You can beat traitors and villains, and you have the right to kill them first and then report them. Xianyu and Qi was slightly surprised and couldn't help but glance at Chu Hongii, then bowed and said, "Shang Fang's sword is also awarded to meritorious ministers, Your Majesty. General Chu can be regarded as a meritorious minister to me, the new queen. After all, there will be many places where General Chu will be used in the future." Nan 11 smiled lightly, her eyebrows calm and peaceful, "But there is a condition. Everything can be done. The prerequisite for doing whatever you want is to be loyal to the emperor. My cousin was born in the royal family, so he should know that accompanying the emperor is like accompanying a tiger. Once you have thoughts that you shouldn't have in the future, today's glory will be the weapon of death in the future. The consequences of the emperor's betrayal and ruthlessness will be almost universal in this world. No one can bear it." Xianyu and Qi's heart trembled slightly. "Even though I am kind-hearted, Rong Yu will not forgive anyone who fails me," Nan 11 said lightly, "just like my cousin will not forgive anyone who will hurt General Chu. You should understand this truth, but Rong Yu has absolute power and strength in his hands. What he wants to do and the family he wants to get rid of can be done easily." Nan 11 didn't want to play any imperial tricks, and she wasn't interested in letting people guess her thoughts. For people who are trustworthy, putting some things on the table can be beneficial to both parties. There are so many people in this world who want to live as they please, but there are very few people in the world who can truly do as they please. Whatever you get, you are destined to give up something. Even the emperor must be restrained, not to mention other people. As the legitimate son of Prince Jing, Xianyu Qi was known to Nan 11 in the Great Zhou dynasty, and had a very good impression of him after contacting him. His dedication and manly demeanor were even more popular in the hearts of women. Although Nan 11 was the queen, but as a girl, because she is emotionally happy, she naturally respects dedicated men more. So invisibly, Xianyu Qi had more preferences than the other prince's sons. Nan 11 admired the heroine in Chu Hongii and the general who ruled the country. Coupled with her upright and straightforward character, Nan 11 naturally liked her. This couple has an advantage in front of the emperor that other ministers and many noble sons in the imperial capital do not have. In the future, there will be no shortage of glory and honor. This is almost a result that Nan 11 can expect regardless of whether he promises or not. However, since ancient times, the emperor's favor has usually been accompanied by risks. Either the emperor was jealous and jealous, or the powerful ministers were ambitious and forgot their original intentions. At this moment, stating the words clearly in advance is both a reminder and a promise. As long as the ministers are loyal, the sage king will not fail to anyone first. But once the ministers have different intentions, then the honor and favor of today will be in the future. The sword above the head. When the sword fell, everything was too late. Xian Yuanqi was born in a royal family and was used to seeing the king's tolerance and ruthlessness. He also experienced the struggle for interests of the royal family. He went to the great Zhou dynasty early and wandered around the theater. He also experienced the toil of the people at the bottom working hard to make a living. He understood the relationship between the powerful and the powerful. The gap between humble common people. Therefore, the reminder of Nan 11's words today can be understood more clearly. Raising his hands to lift his robe, he knelt down solemnly to thank him, "Your Majesty." Okay, Nan 11 waved her hand, "I don't like to be sensational. If you have nothing else to do, go back early. Let me know when the wedding day is set. I have another gift to send you." Xian Yuanqi was so full of words of loyalty that she couldn't say anything. She was silent for a long time, secretly thinking that just now she was still showing the majesty of an empress, and her sentences were to the point. Now she has returned to the temperament of a little girl. She doesn't even use I anymore, and speaks directly in a down-to-earth manner. Saying I makes people wonder whether to continue to express their loyalty impassionedly, or to breathe a sigh of relief and say thank you with a smile. Xian Yuanqi knew in his heart that Nan 11's words were indeed to the point. The honor and favor of emperors have been accompanied by risks since ancient times. However, no matter how many people understood this truth, no king would remind him like this in front of his ministers. Queen Nan 11 is indeed tolerant and gentle, but Rong Yu is an evil god that no one dares to look down upon. This evil god's name is universally recognized, even if he showed unusual behavior in Dongling during this period. Some are peaceful, and he is currently recovering from injuries. It can't change the toughness and cold-bloodedness in his bones. Anyone who ignores the cold heart and ruthless tactics of the ruthless regent beside Her Majesty the Queen is undoubtedly seeking death. At least Xian Yuanqi, who had seen Rong Yu depose the emperor without changing his face, would never make such a mistake. After the two left, Nan 11 stood up and entered the inner hall. Rong Yu did not lie on the bed, but sat on the couch by the window, his eyes fixed on the window. Chu Nanyi stood behind him and treated his wounds. They heard the conversation between Nan 11 and Xian Yuanqi outside clearly. When Nan 11 said the family I want to get rid of, her hands trembled. They immediately felt that Rong Yu and Nan 11 were a perfect match. The threatening words were just like Rong Yu taking someone's life. Although the momentum was different, the aura was equally strong. After changing the medicine, Chu Nanyi washed his hands in the basin beside him, dried them, and then took Rong Yu's robe and put it on him. The master's physical condition is better than I expected. It's a good thing that he doesn't have a fever. I will come to change the medicine for the master in the evening. He bowed to Nan 11 and said, I'll take my leave. Nan 11 hummed, thank you for your hard work. Chu Nanyi said he didn't dare, and then hesitantly said, I have already told Xingling last night that replacing the coptis root in the soup with double the bamboo leaves can also achieve the effect of removing internal heat. If your majesty is worried. Rong Yu turned his head and glanced at him without emotion, you can kneel down and greet. Chu Nanyi was silent for a moment, then bowed respectfully and took his leave. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 386. Rong Yu looked at Nan 11, and Nan 11 looked at Rong Yu. Their eyes met, and the atmosphere was warm and subtle for a moment. Your subordinates really take good care of you, Nan 11 said calmly. I'm afraid that you may inadvertently suffer injustices that you don't deserve. Your Majesty is very aware, Rong Yu said with lowered eyebrows and eyes. Sincerely, I really don't know anything. Nan 11 looked at him for a moment and couldn't help but smile. Don't destroy the regent's cold and aloof image. I obey. Rong Yu accepted the order, and at the same time reached out for Nan 11, wrapped her in his arms, lowered his head and kissed her lips, and then said softly, do you smell bitterness? Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. Are you accusing me? I dare not. Rong Yu shook his head. I am asking for a favor from His Majesty. What grace do you ask for? I want to go out and get some air. Nan 11 was silent for a moment. I thought you wanted to stop drinking the bitter medicine. My husband dare not bargain. The transition from subject to husband is smooth and natural, without any stiffness. Nan 11 turned her head and looked outside. The sun was just right, but it was the coldest month of the 12th lunar month, and no matter how bright the sun was, she couldn't ignore the cold current in the air. Be calm, she refused flatly. A seriously injured patient still dares to be willful. He really deserves a beating. Instead of lying on the bed to recover from such a serious injury, you actually want to go out for some air? I don't know what to think. Nan 11 was not used to his problems and ordered Yunyu to lead the palace people to retreat, then walked to the bed and sat down, then reached out and patted the bed. Come over here and lie down. Rong Yu glanced at her silently, walked to the bed, and lay on it without saying a word. My husband's majesty for so many years has vanished into thin air. It sounds aggrieved. Rong Yu reached out and held Nan 11's thin wrist. Lie with me for a while. Nan 11 thought for a while. Today is the second day after we ascend the throne. Logically speaking, we should go to court. Rong Yu tilted his head and looked at her. You just remembered. Nan 11 reached out and patted him on the head. Presumptuous. Rong Yu laughed sullenly, his wounds throbbing with pain. 11 you are the first person who dares to hit me on the head. Nan 11 looked at him for a moment and said calmly, do you want me to call you back? I can't bear it. Rong Yu kissed the back of her hand. Well, I don't dare either. Nan 11 was silent for a moment. Empress Jinghua has never beaten you before. Rong Yu was slightly startled, then slowly shook his head. No, she is too dignified, too noble, and has an inviolable majesty of the Empress in front of others. Even in private, she would not do such a thing that would damage the image of the Empress. Nan 11 looked at him. So, I'm not dignified or noble enough. Rong Yu couldn't help but want to laugh again. 11 my husband's body hurts so much. Even if you want to make me laugh, wait until I'm healed. Who told me I wanted to make you laugh? Nan 11 reached out and pinched his ears, pretending to be angry. I am asking you to accuse me, can't you hear it? Rong Yu was silent for a moment, lying on the bed meekly, as if he was at your mercy. I was wrong. Nan 11 coughed lightly, let go of her hand, put her feet up on the bed, and lay down beside him. Her voice was calm. Listening to what you just said, I understand that you really like Nan 11 now, not Jinghua Empress. After all, Nan 11 and Empress Jinghua are very different in temperament, and the way Nan 11 likes him is also different from Empress Jinghua. From the perspective of a bystander, Empress Jinghua is actually just an obsession in Rong Huijin's heart. Because she couldn't get what she asked for, she eventually developed paranoid thoughts and was unwilling to give up even reincarnation. The love between Rong Yu and Nan 11 is more lively. It is not a monarch-subject relationship with clear distinction between superiority and inferiority. There is no looking up and chasing. They have been on an equal position from the beginning. Even though the status of Nan 11 was not as good as that of the regent Rong Yu, but apart from being a little cautious, Rong Yu had always treated her with the most normal relationship between husband and wife. The husband loves and cares for his wife, and the wife is considerate of her husband. This should also be the wish that he had always wanted but failed to achieve in his previous life, and it eventually became a regret. If Rong Yu still regards Nan 11 as Empress Jinghua, their current love will not be like this. Precisely because Nan 11 understands the paranoia in his heart, the more she can put herself in his shoes and be tolerant to him, and then in terms of thoughts it suddenly dawned on him instead of dwelling on who he loved. Rong Yu turned his head and looked at her without saying a word. Although she is me and I am her, women are all narrow-minded, especially when it comes to emotions. Nan 11's eyes were calm and her voice was calm. I can bear that you like me in this life because of her, but I can't stand the fact that in the years to come, you will always regard me as Empress Jinghua. After all, we are different. Rong Yu moved towards her, wrapped her whole body in his arms, and buried his head on the side of her neck. I am selfish. Nan 11 said, people are selfish. From the first time I saw you, I knew you were different from her. Rong Yu said, Danchu has been taught the standard of a prince since she was a child. Therefore, she is precocious, intelligent, and wise. Just looking at her will give birth to a child. There is so much pressure. You are different. You used to be silly and innocent, like a soft little bun. Wait a minute. The more things Nan 11 heard, the more something was wrong. She couldn't help but interrupt him. Who is stupid? Who is acting like a little bun again? Rong Yu was silent for a moment, then raised his head slightly and looked at her. When I first met you, you were still young, like a little dumpling. Nan 11's expression was petrified. Little dumpling? She was talking about? When did you first meet me? Nan 11 was entangled, because there was really no way to put these words on herself. It can't be when you just landed in the womb. Rong Yu held his cheek, as if recalling. Well, the little face was pink and tender, milky white, and the eyes were big and bright, twinkling like stars in the night sky. Rong Yu, Nan 11 said in a light tone, is it pink and tender, or milky white? Rong Yu was silent, just looking at her quietly with a pair of deep pupils. Nan 11 forgave him for only leading troops to fight, but not thinking about what words to use to describe a child. She quickly skipped the topic and smiled. So in your heart, I have always been different from Empress Jinghua. Rong Yu hummed, different. It's just that I have always selfishly wanted to see her shadow in you, but now I think about it, I feel how stupid I am. Why do you feel stupid? The love of an emperor is very heavy. Rong Yu smiled lightly. If you really have the people of the world in your heart, I am afraid that the first person who can't stand it will be me. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 387. He can say these words calmly, and his condition today is obviously different from before. He is no longer so sad and lonely, cautious, and there is obvious relief in his eyebrows. Maybe after calming down in the past 2 days, he himself can gradually understand what is deep in his heart. What do feelings come from? Dan Shu and Nan 11 are the same person, but they are two women with different temperaments. The obvious differences between the two gradually became clearer in his impression, and it also allowed Rong Yu to gradually see clearly which one he loved in this life, so that he could feel calm and let go. This is thanks to Nan 11's tolerance. In the past life, Rong Huijin's feelings for Empress Jinghua were chasing and looking up to her, with an insurmountable gap in dignity. In this life, Rong Yu is greedy for Nan 11's gentleness and tolerance, and likes to see her occasional playfulness and being pampered. Little domineering. These are things that Dan Shu did not have in her previous life. Only Nan 11 can be held in his arms and occupied alone, but Empress Jinghua belongs to the entire people of Dongling Kingdom. Everyone can only surrender and look up to her, and no one is qualified to occupy her alone. Therefore, Nangzi is Nangzi, and Danchu is Danchu. They are fundamentally different. But I'm on the throne now, what should I do? Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. As an emperor, you are destined to think about the people of the world, and you can't just think about yourself selfishly. Rong Yu was silent for a moment. I changed my mind. I was trapped in a demonic barrier before and couldn't extricate myself. Although I tried my best to restrain myself, I really wanted to see you ascend to the throne of God and become a radiant king, Rong Yu said in a low tone, but now I realize that I want you to be radiant. I am the only one who can see it. Why do you have to be responsible for them? How can a selfish person like me allow you to stand in the spotlight and endure this? How can you tolerate the sight of so many completely unrelated people besides me? Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. So please forgive me for being selfish. Rong Yu lowered his eyebrows and kissed her face. 11 give me a few more years, I can train a qualified emperor, and then we can fly far away and leave the world of right and wrong. Earth, I will take you to every mountain, river, and lake in the world, and I will take you to see every scene in the family. We can be happy and worry-free for the rest of our lives. You can do whatever you want. I will definitely make you the happiest person in the world. Girl. Well, your idea is wonderful, and I admire it very much. Nan 11 nodded, but can you train a qualified emperor in just a few years? Who do you want to train? Rong Yu turned his eyes slightly and reached out to caress her abdomen. This. Nan 11 frowned. Your son hasn't been born yet, and you want him to work so hard to become the emperor, and let us parents live in peace and quiet. Rong Yu calmly defended, thousands of miles of mountains and rivers is an honor that many people can only ask for. Of course we have to leave it to our sons. But he will only be a few years old in a few years. Nan 11 frowned deeply. You don't really plan to let a kid of a few years old become the emperor, do you? Rong Yu said, I will work hard to teach Dash. No matter how hard you try, he is still a child. Nan 11 categorically rejected his plan. Let me tell you, you are not allowed to have the idea of passing on the throne to your son until he is 14 years old. Rong Yu was silent. I was already on the battlefield when I was 14 years old. You are you, and he is him. Nan 11 frowned. How can you be the same? Rong Yu still wanted to argue, but when he met Nan 11's calm eyes, all his momentum was instantly reduced to rubbish. Not long after, he lay back on the pillow in silence, his voice obviously softer. A few years later, the court will be a completely new court, and I will arrange for my son to have trustworthy loyal ministers and good generals, as well as the best tutor. Since you can teach him well, why do you need a tutor? Nan 11 said calmly, he should be able to stand alone. Rong Yu suddenly became speechless. The god of war, who commanded thousands of troops on the battlefield and defeated the enemy country to pieces, was completely wiped out by Nan 11 with a few words, and became as docile as a cat. Get rid of that unrealistic thought in your mind as soon as possible, Nan 11 said in a calm voice. Sleep. If the injured do not take good care of themselves, they will only think about what they have and what is not. Rong Yu stretched out his hand to encircle her whole body. Sleep together. The sun is shining brightly outside the hall and the air is fresh. However, an uninvited guest came to Prince Jing's mansion. Mrs. Zhen Qiagong was sitting in the main hall of the palace, with a polite smile on her face. I take the liberty of disturbing you today, but I would like to ask Princess Hai Han. Princess Jing, who was sitting in the main seat, smiled lightly. My lord and wife, you don't have to be so polite. Madame Zhenqiu sighed. To be honest, I have heard some rumors at home these days, saying that the prince's marriage contract with the general of the Chu family has been finalized, and what we discussed before. I didn't think carefully before. I'm really sorry. Princess Jing showed some apology. I was severely reprimanded by the prince for this matter. Chi'er also insisted not to marry anyone other than Chu Hong'ai. In addition, the prince took I issued a marriage contract with the Chu family and insisted on fulfilling the engagement. I am really sorry about this. Mrs. Genkuo's expression froze slightly, and then she forced a smile, but in matters of marriage, as parents say, only the princess can make the decision. The problem is that I can't be the master now. Princess Jing looked embarrassed. You don't even know that Cheer hated me because of this. She refused to talk to me as a mother for several days in a row, and almost severed the mother-child relationship with me. Her Majesty the Queen is in charge of this matter, so I really can't do anything about it. She paused and sighed. After all, I only have one son. I can't break off relations with him just because of this, right? The lady of the Duke of Genkuo was silent for a long time after hearing this, then Lan Yi. Lan Yi is a good girl, but Cheer doesn't have this blessing, Princess Jing said, although she said some things she shouldn't have said at the Queen's flower viewing banquet. Overall, she is still a good girl. The lady of the Duke of Genkuo unconsciously tightened the handkerchief in her hand after hearing this. Said something she shouldn't have said? Isn't this accusing Lan Yi of being unruly? She smiled lightly. Lan Yi and Wanner are very compatible. I had to invite her to come to the palace today. They should be strolling in the garden now. My Lan Yi is arrogant. Looking at all the major families, only Wanner gets along best with her. Is this to drag Wanner into the water? Princess Jing knew that what happened that day was related to Ji Wanner. Wanner was stupid, otherwise she wouldn't be used as a pawn by Fang Lan Yi. But in the end, Wanner and Chu Hong I had no grudges. Wasn't it all because of Fang Lan Yi? Thinking of this, she frowned slightly. I wanted to ask her to come over and teach her a lesson. She dared to cause trouble in the palace and said anything. She simply didn't know how to live or die. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 388. Mrs. Genkuo's face froze, and her expression could no longer remain calm and composed. Even the smile on the corner of her mouth looked a little more forced. Wanner is still young after all, so it is inevitable that she will make mistakes. Princess the servant stood outside the pavilion and reported respectfully, the Crown Prince and General Chu are here. Mrs. Genkuo's expression paused, and she couldn't help but look at Princess Jing, as if she was surprised. Isn't Chu Hong I not here yet? Entering and leaving the palace in a grand manner before entering the door? Inform the kitchen to prepare a few more dishes at noon. By the way, remember to stew the birds' nests that Her Royal Highness the Princess just delivered yesterday. Princess Jing finished instructing the housekeeper, and then turned to look at Mrs. Genkuo helplessly. Sighing softly, I can't help it. Hong Yi is pregnant now, and she is a general who wields swords and guns. She doesn't care much about things like her daughter's house. I have to let her come over often and order the kitchen to make some nourishing food for her. She is replenishing her body. After all, she is carrying the blood of Prince Jing's family, don't you think so? Mrs. Genkuo forced a smile. The princess is right. Regardless of whether your daughter-in-law likes her or not, this grandson is a legitimate member of Prince Jing's family. He should still make up for it if he is good. Princess Jing picked up the teacup and took a sip. She pretended not to understand the meaning of her words and said calmly, it's strange that Cheer has it. If the prince and I hadn't taught him well, he wouldn't have been so good before we got married. She did something so contrary to ethics that a girl in Hong I's family has to suffer criticism, and we can't forgive her. He said with a faint smile, if Hong Yi hadn't begged for mercy, the prince would have used family law to punish him. After all, what he did was indeed outrageous. She kept saying red clothes, and she seemed to regard Chu Hong I as one of her own family members. This was completely different from her previous attitude. What could others say? Mrs. Genkuo didn't want to stay here any longer and bring trouble to herself. She finally stood up and said with a faint smile, then Lan Yi and I will go back first. I take the liberty of disturbing you today. Please forgive me, Princess. Princess Jing naturally stood up and said, I'll see you off. The two of them walked out together. As soon as they arrived outside the hall, they saw a maid trotting over in a hurry, panting and saying, "King, Princess. What are you doing?" Princess Jing frowned, "Are there any rules?" Madam saw the joke. The maid lowered her head to apologize and said, "Miss Ji had a conflict with General Chu." Princess Jing's face changed slightly, "What's going on?" When Mrs. Zhenguo heard her words, her expression froze for a moment. Then she thought of the conflict between Ji Wan'er and Chu Hong'ai. She immediately calmed her expression and said with a slight smile, "I'd better go and have a look with the princess." "Don't let it happen." Wan'er collided with General Chu. Princess Jing didn't say anything else, she just asked the maid to lead the way, and they quickly followed her towards the garden. The cause of the matter is quite ordinary. Ji Wan'er and Fang Lanyi were hanging out in the garden. When they heard the news that the prince was back, Ji Wan'er pulled Fang Lanyi and walked out. They planned to have a chance encounter, but they didn't expect that Xian Yuanqi came back with Chu Hong'ai. When his eyes touched the fairy-like pair, Fang Lanyi's expression froze for a moment, and Ji Wan'er also frowned subconsciously. Both of them were obviously unhappy. But Fang Lanyi will definitely not show any emotions at this time. General Chu is not married yet, how can he have sex with his cousin? As a cousin of Prince Jing's palace, Ji Wan'er asked Chu Hong'ai with a hostess tone, "Aren't you afraid of others laughing at you?" Xian Yuanqi's expression suddenly turned cold. The previous 2 slaps weren't painful enough, were they? Ji Wan'er's face stiffened and she gritted her teeth. "The visitor is a guest. I am here to pay my respects to my aunt today. If my cousin is rude to me, I will tell my aunt." Fang Lanyi glanced at Xian Yuanqi quietly, her posture was gentle and peaceful, and she looked like the years had passed peacefully, but Chu Hong'ai still caught the slight hint of shyness and timidity in her eyes. So Chu Hong'ai looked at her expressionlessly. "Is General Chu not happy to see me?" Fang Lanyi lowered his eyebrows and smiled bitterly, with an expression of forbearance and mercy, "I am a guest with my mother today. If General Chu doesn't like it, I will leave immediately." As soon as these words came out, Ji Wan'er's hostility towards Chu Hong'ai was instantly aroused. "Miss Fang came here with me." Ji Wan'er frowned, "If General Chu is unhappy and has a temper, just get angry at me. There is no need to show off to Lan Yi." "Showing off?" Chu Hong'ai gave her a cold look, "Who is she? Who do you think you are?" One sentence scolded both of them, and Ji Wan'er's expression suddenly changed, "General Chu is too." "Shut up." Xian Yuanqi gave her a cold look. "What did I tell you in the palace before?" Ji Wan'er was stunned for a moment, then her face turned pale. "He said that from now on Prince Jing's mansion would cut off relations with the Ji family, and no one from the Ji family would be allowed to step into Prince Jing's mansion again." Ji Wan'er thought he said what he said out of anger and didn't take it seriously. Besides, Princess Jing was her aunt. She used to come whenever she wanted, so why wasn't she allowed to enter the palace? "Get out of the palace immediately." Xian Yuanqi held Chu Hong'ai's hand, "Otherwise, don't blame me for having someone drive you out." After leaving these words, he was about to leave with Chu Hong'ai when he saw Princess Jing and Mrs. Zhenqiagong walking from the corridor from afar, followed by more than 10 maids from the palace and Duke Guo's palace. Swinging, full of posture. "What's going on?" Princess Jing frowned and glanced from Ji Wan'er's face to Chu Hong'ai, her expression immediately turned into concern. "You just came back from the palace, I ordered the kitchen to cook something you like, I stayed for lunch before leaving, and I also asked them to stew birds' nests." Aunt Ji Wan'er's eyes turned red, and she interrupted aggrievedly, "My cousin wants to drive me out of the house." Princess Jing frowned, turned to look at her, and said in a cold tone, "Why are you crying? Is Prince Jing's mansion the place where you behave?" Ji Wan'er was stunned and looked at her in disbelief. "Aunt, I think you have been spoiled since you were a child, and you have no rules at all," Princess Jing said in a stern tone, "you don't study well all day long. You are not good at playing music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, but you are better at speaking rudely than anyone else. Your cousin wants to drive you away. Why did he drive you away? If you did nothing wrong, he would drive you away. Yandere saw that her expression was colder than ever before and her face was pale. She was so frightened that she didn't dare to speak. Let the Duke's wife and Miss Fang watch the joke. Princess Jing's face was calm, but when she turned to look at the Zhenguo Duke's wife, she suppressed her anger. Yandere is not sensible. She has been unruly and brainless since she was a child, and she is the most vulnerable. She was deceived and used by others to help count money. I will definitely teach her a lesson later. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 389. Ms. Zhenguo's expression could hardly be restrained from turning ugly. What does this mean? Yandere has no brains and is most easily deceived by others. Does this mean that Lanyi seduced her? Fang Lanyi bit her lip lightly, and naturally heard the meaning of Princess Jing's words, and couldn't help but feel a secret hatred in her heart. Before Chu Hong'ai was pregnant, Princess Jing was clearly very fond of her. Why did she change her previous opposition to Chu Hong'ai when she became pregnant before marriage, and became so protective of the unpopular Chu Hong'ai? Tower Princess Jing ordered the maid beside her with a light voice, "Send Ms. Zhenguo and Miss Fang out." Yes. Wait a moment. Chu Hong'ai spoke slowly and reached out for the long whip from her waist. "This is the Shangfang Bao whip that Her Majesty the Queen just gave me when we were in the palace. It can be used to beat treacherous ministers. When you fight a villain, you have the right to kill him first and then kill him." She raised her eyes slightly, looked at Fang Lanyi's weak and innocent appearance, and said with a cold voice, "It means that no matter who it is, as long as it makes me unhappy, the general has the right to use this whip to teach me a lesson. If Miss Fang, if you don't want to be disfigured or taste the whip, it's best to stay away from me in the future." Fang Lanyi looked at her in disbelief. "General Chu, are you threatening me?" "No, it's just a reminder." Chu Hong'ai's tone was cold. "Things can only happen once or twice. You have already violated my bottom line. If I see you next time, you will still be so weak on the surface but full of bad intentions. Look, I will make you cry and beg for mercy." As he spoke, he added lightly, "Xian Yuanqi doesn't hit women, I will." Ahem. Xian Yuanqi cleared his throat. "It's not good to let the wife do it. My husband can do it for me occasionally." As soon as he said this, Princess Jing and Chu Hong'ai turned to look at him at the same time. Xian Yuanqi said calmly, "Please, Ms. Zhenguo, please take your daughter back. Today's incident can only be regarded as our poor hospitality. I hope Madam will be considerate, and I also hope that Miss Fang will be self-respecting in the future." Madame Zhenguo's face became more and more worried. Prince, I don't plan to divorce my wife, and I'm not interested in taking a concubine," Xian Yuanqi said calmly, "and after Hongyi comes over, I will fully support anything she does. Even if she kills someone on the street, I will fully defend her. To deal with the aftermath, and to ensure that the murdered people have no way to redress their grievances at all costs." Ms. Zhenguo's expression froze and she looked at him in disbelief. Listen to what this says. How could the dignified noble prince act like a bully and talk about bullying others so confidently? What nonsense are you talking about? Princess Jing also turned pale and glared at her son displeased. "Even if you have just received a reward from Her Majesty the Queen, you should restrain yourself and learn to be a low-key person." Madame Zhenguo clenched her hands. How could Chu Hong'ai be so virtuous and capable that after the scandal of being pregnant out of wedlock was revealed, she was not punished at all, but instead received a reward from Her Majesty the Queen? Sure enough, the coldness and uprightness on the outside are all fake, Her real ability is probably her ability to please. Xian Yuanqi said calmly, what the mother-in-law said is true. As long as no one messes with Hongyi, I promise to be very low-key. Let Hongyi do all the things that can make her famous. Let her earn military merits for the palace and be envied by outsiders. I married a heroine. Okay, Princess Jing couldn't listen to his words. You take Hong Ai to have a rest first, and we will have dinner together at Songhe Hall at noon. Your father will also be back. Xian Yuan prayed, took Chu Hong Ai's hand and turned around to leave. He had no interest in paying attention to the resentment and unwillingness of the weak Bai Lianhua at this time. Fang Lanyi looked at the two people's leaving figures, biting her lips, her beautiful face showing a little pale color, looking like she had been shocked. Cheer has been accustomed to being casual since she was a child. She has no rules and makes the Duke and Madame laugh. Princess Jing sighed, I won't send you away. The Duke of Zhenqiu was too angry to get angry, and she had to maintain a perfect and dignified demeanor. I don't dare to trouble the princess. After saying that, he nodded slightly and quickly turned around and left with Fang Lanyi. Princess Jing watched the mother and daughter leave quietly for a while, then turned to look at Ji Weiner, who didn't dare to speak anymore, and said coldly, when did you get so close to Fang Lanyi? Ji Weiner's heart skipped a beat when she heard her displeased tone. She took the initiative to put her arm on her arm and said coquettishly, Aunt. I'm asking you something, Princess Jing said in a cold tone. Do you have a good relationship with her? Ji Weiner froze and didn't know how to answer this question for a moment, because she was not sure about her aunt's attitude. If they agreed, she and Fang Lanyi would indeed be good. But she saw her aunt's attitude towards Fang Lanyi today. If it was bad, she had stood up for Fang Lanyi many times before, and she couldn't deny it. After thinking for a moment, she said cautiously, because I heard my aunt say before that she wanted my cousin to marry Fang Lanyi, so I got closer to her. Isn't this also because I want to have a good relationship with my future cousin-in-law? Build a good relationship, Princess Jing said coldly, so you can't tell the difference between evil, and you are being used by her again and again. Ji Weiner was speechless. I. You should be glad that when you said those words, Her Majesty the Queen had just come from the great Zhou dynasty and had not yet ascended the throne, otherwise you would know what trouble comes from your mouth. Princess Jing took her hand away and said in a light voice, Cheer, since I don't want you to come to the palace, please don't come here anymore. Seeing send your cousin back to the palace. Yes, Princess. Ji Weiner panicked and quickly reached out to hold Princess Jing's arm and refused to let go. Aunt, I was wrong. I will never associate with Fang Lanyi again. Can I go and apologize to my cousin and his wife? I promise that I will never be rude to General Chu again. No, I will never be rude to my cousin's wife again. I will be respectful and honest, and I will never make my cousin angry again. Aunt, please forgive me this time, Aunt. Princess Jing looked at her expressionlessly. Cheer is angry now. Do you think he is willing to listen to you? Ji Weiner's face was full of uneasiness. Pitiful 11 bit her lip and said, Aunt, I really know I was wrong. Go back and reflect on yourself for a few days, Princess Jing said coldly, determined to teach her a lesson. You'd better really realize where you went wrong. If you make the same mistake again, don't say you are my niece. Ji Weiner was relieved when she heard that there was still room for maneuver, and nodded repeatedly. Aunt, don't worry, I will be careful and cautious in the future, and I will never associate with Miss Fang again. I will be filial to my cousin's wife. By the way, in order to atone for my crime, there is something I want to tell my cousin and his wife in person. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 390. Princess Jing frowned. What's the matter? Ji Weiner fell silent, looked around, then took Princess Jing's arm and walked to a deserted place, whispering, Fang Lanyi wants to deal with my cousin. Princess Jing was silent after hearing this. Although she was unhappy when she heard this, she didn't take it seriously, and even looked down upon it, just her. Although she initially liked Fang Lanyi and wanted Fang Lanyi to come and be her daughter-in-law, this could not change the fact that Fang Lanyi's ability was not enough in front of Chu Hong Ai. Want to deal with Chu Hong Ai? The girl from the Fang family will have to practice for a few hundred more years. Aunt Ji Weiner muttered, we must guard against this matter. Princess Jing glanced at her, saw her expression was strange, and said in a deep voice, how does she plan to deal with Hong Yi? Aren't my cousin and cousin-in-law going to get married in a few days? Naturally, they will invite 11 Niang to get married. Fang Lanyi took care of the most famous MRS-11 in the city and planned to attack her cousin on the wedding day. Ji Wan'er spoke louder and louder. The younger the child, the last word left was murmuring, on the day of the wedding, 11 Niang is responsible for decorating the new house after welcoming the bride. There are 4 gifts of dates, peanuts, longan, and chestnuts on the bed. 11 Niang only needs to move a little when making the bed. Hands and feet. The more Princess Jing listened, the uglier her face became. She originally thought it was just some of the most common tricks used by little girls, but she didn't expect. Well, it is indeed a method commonly used by women when fighting against each other, but it is just too dirty. Ji Wan'er lowered her head, almost daring to say the last words, but she had to say, as long as, just put a little musk on the bed, the unformed fetus in my cousin's belly will, just. Princess Jing clenched her hands tightly, her face suddenly darkened, and she looked at her with obvious anger. How did you know about this? Ji Weiner's expression changed. I. Were you involved in the plan? No, I didn't. And, I really didn't. Ji Wan'er's face suddenly changed, and she quickly raised her hand. I swear to God, and, even if you lend me some courage, I would not dare to murder my cousin's heir. That's enough. Princess Jing interrupted her coldly, turned around and walked away quickly. Follow me to Hongchen Garden, and you can explain to Chi yourself. Ji Wan'er felt panicked and uneasy, her mind was in chaos, and she followed her in small steps, constantly thinking about how to explain to her cousin later to make herself sound more innocent, although she was not involved in this matter in the first place. But it seems that not reporting the information is not a small crime. She hopes that she can get away with the crime. If I save my cousin's child, can my cousin put aside his past grudges against her and let things go by the wayside? Ji Wan'er held her heartbeat that was getting faster and faster, and finally began to regret that she and Fang Lanyi were standing in the same boat. Now think about it, since Fang Lanyi could come up with such a despicable method, even the child, so what? Maybe she is a kind-hearted, weak, and innocent woman? She was so stupid that she didn't see her true face earlier, and she foolishly believed that she was really an innocent victim. When they arrived at Hongchen Garden, Princess Jing was about to go in. Suddenly, she thought of what she had said before. She paused slightly and said calmly to the maid in the yard, "Go and inform the prince." "Yes." The maid turned around and entered the room. After a while, Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hong'ai walked out of the room. Xian Yuanqi was about to speak when he looked up and saw Ji Wan'er following Princess Jing. His expression suddenly turned cold. "Why haven't you left yet?" Ji Wan'er couldn't help but flinch. Princess Jing's voice was light and gloomy. "Wan'er has something to tell you." Xian Yuanqi saw that her expression was wrong, and glanced at Ji Wan'er coldly, with a hint of thoughtfulness in his eyes. He walked down the stone steps in front of the door, took Chu Hong'ai's arm and walked to the stone table in the yard to sit down. "What do you want to say?" Although his face is delicate and soft, the cold eyebrows at this time make people feel terrified. "If you want to apologize, then don't do it. I don't have time to listen to your self-righteous and stupid apology." Ji Wan'er bit her lip, shook her head slowly, and said timidly, "No. I'm not trying to apologize, I'm here to take credit for my crime." The maid came out from the house carrying a teapot and teacups, and poured tea for the masters. Princess Jing sat at the table and held up the teacup without saying a word, obviously not intending to speak for Ji Weiner. Although Ji Weiner is her natal niece, she can't even tolerate such a hopelessly stupid niece, let alone cheat her. Besides, which one is more important, the biological son or the niece? She felt like a mirror. Chu Hongyi didn't say anything, and his face always had a cold and distant expression. Ji Weiner's face was pale, and she stood hurriedly in front of Xian Yuanqi. Her voice was as low as a mosquito's buzzing. With obvious fear and uneasiness, Fang Lanyi planned to deal with her cousin on the day of the wedding, so that her cousin would lose everything in her belly. She said that the reason why her cousin was determined to marry her cousin and the reason why her aunt agreed to let her in was because of the child in her belly. As long as my cousin's child is gone, from now on. When Xian Yuanqi heard the child who lost his belly, his expression suddenly darkened, his brows and eyes were filled with cold evil aura, and his fingers holding the teacup were so hard that one almost suspected that he was going to crush the teacup in the next moment. By the time Ji Weiner finished speaking intermittently, his world-famous appearance was already covered in coldness and frost, and his voice was as cold as ever. How do you know? Ji Weiner's lip was almost bitten, but she didn't dare to lie. Fang Lanyi told me, cousin, I told the truth. Xian Yuanqi asked coldly, why did she tell you this? No matter how close the two were, Fang Lanyi would not be stupid enough to tell others such a sinister plan. Ji Weiner was Princess Jing's niece after all. If the incident happened in the future, wouldn't she be afraid that Ji Weiner, an insider, would turn her out? Ji Weiner was almost helpless under his cold questioning, her legs were weak, and she almost couldn't help but want to kneel down, because. Xian Yuanqi said coldly, because of what? Because, Ji Weiner lowered her head, so I went and asked Fang Lanyi. Fang Lanyi originally wanted to hide it, but she knew that it would be better to let Ji Weiner know the truth than to make Ji Weiner suspicious. When the time comes, she can directly drag her into the water without worrying that she will betray herself. Unexpectedly, Ji Weiner sold her in a blink of an eye. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix.